20 years ago, I used to be a financial advisor, selling all the Wall Street approved investments, mutual funds, insurances, annuities, all that stuff. But once I saw what was really happening behind the scenes, I knew I had to walk away. Understand, I was a financial advisor for 4 years. I had drank the Kool-Aid. I believed in it wholeheartedly. I actually got into it for 2 reasons. One, I thought if I can make myself more financially free, maybe a better investor, things like that, and create freedom for myself, that's awesome. But secondly, I want to create financial freedom for my dad. Because my dad always grew up teaching us that, we can't afford this. What do you think I am, made of money? Money doesn't grow on trees. So always hearing that stuff growing up, it was always a scarcity of money. But even worse, he would say, Chris, I'm going to die working. I think this job will literally kill me from the stress. And I didn't want that for him. I wanted him to have at least some of his life before he passed away. And so I went into that thinking, hey, if I can find the answers for my dad, maybe he can actually retire. Maybe he can enjoy a few years before he does die. And so anyways, so I did that. 4 years I was in that moment. But then after 4 years, my dad said, hey, Chris, are you going to advise me at some point? When are you going to sit down with me? So I did. I sat down with him. It was actually over a Thanksgiving weekend. I decided to sit down, look at all of his finances and everything. First time I've ever seen his money. And so I realized he was debt-free. Like, this guy had paid off all of his debt, including his mortgage. He had paid off his mortgage early. So he had no debt. He had been stuffing money in his 401k, getting the company match because he was working for a company. He was doing everything right. But then when I looked at those numbers, I said, Dad, you're 61 years old right now. If you want to retire right now, you're going to have to die in about 5 or 6 years because you'll run out of money. Okay, that's not what I want to hear from you, Chris. What's the answer? What else should I be investing in? I don't know. You did it all right. I thought about things like could I put him in this annuity and there's these features or these guarantees with this or that, or should I put him into this investment or that investment? And nothing felt right because the truth is, it was all based on speculation. What if the market tanked? Which, by the way, this was in end of 2005 I'm talking to him. It wasn't just a few years later, the market did tank. And so I didn't feel comfortable just throwing him in any investment. I knew that I couldn't guarantee him anything. And so I was lost for answers. This is what got me away because I started to look for something outside of it. Eventually I talked to a friend of mine that had trained to be a financial advisor, but then he quit to go do real estate investing. And as he's talking to me, he's like, well, Chris, how many of your clients are financially free? Well, none of them, if you think about not worrying about money as financial freedom, like they're retired, but they always worry that they're going to run out of money. Okay, are you as financial advisors financially free? Anybody in your office financially free that you know of? And as I thought about it, it's like, man, there's people working on my office since the 1970s. They still seem like they have to keep working or they can't quit. So I said, no, I don't think any of them. He's like, well, there's your problem. And so I started looking into real estate investing. And I realized it wasn't about accumulating money. This is the biggest thing that the financial industry has always taught me. They always taught me that you got to set it and forget it. Accumulate, right? Compounding interest is the 8th wonder of the world. Although Einstein never said that, they always misquote it, right? They always keep telling you these things. But at the end of the day, how many people are really in a place where they feel comfortable and confident that they can live on their money? They can live on it forever. Most people usually can't, or if they do think that, often they're usually delusional, and then they just end up running out of money, and then they're just begging for cash and have to have family step in. This has happened so often. And this is the trap I see people caught in every single day, is that they eventually get to this point where they have assets, they're asset rich, but cash flow poor. They don't have income coming in from those assets. Remember, you're supposed to only pull off maybe 3% a year as a 65-year-old. Not 4%, that's if you're in your 70s, you can pull off 4%, but 3% if you're in your 60s. Less if you're trying to do it when you're younger, like in your 40s or 50s, it's more like a 2% rule. So that means if you have $1 million, you want to retire at 45, well, guess what? You're only living on 20,000 years. If you want a 100,000 year lifestyle, you got to save up $5 million. That's hard, really, really hard to do in mutual funds that only average about 8% if you're lucky long term. And that was the other thing. I taught people 12% returns. They weren't getting 12% returns. Long term, you look at the stock market, the S&P 500 has averaged just over 8% a year for the last 30 years. Most mutual funds don't even make 8% a year. So all these things adding up, plus you have inflation to worry about, which makes it even harder to retire, right? That's why you can only have a 3% rule. There had to be something better. When I started looking in the real estate world and looking at passive income, it was different. For example, this happened with one of our clients. He retired, he had $1 million in a retirement account, and the financial advisor said you can live on $30,000 a year. He's like, I'm 60 years old living in California. $30,000 a year is nothing. I need more than that. So rather than wanting to go back to work, he started to look for options, just like I did. And he found the same thing I did, which is I found real estate investing. I could be a passive investor in real estate. For example, I could lend my money out and make 1% a month. Well, if I have $100,000 at 1% a month, I make $1,000 a month. $1 million, like in this guy's case, 1% a month is $10,000 a month. Heck a lot better than $2,500 a month, and then he has to pay taxes on that money too. And so that's what he started doing. Now we had him diversify in different areas and had him look at different stuff. And so he bought some properties like duplexes. He got invested in like apartment buildings where again, he's hands off. He's not doing any of the management of these properties. And then he even did things with oil and gas. And the next thing we know, he was between $100,000 and $130,000 a year coming in from that $1 million. That's the difference. It's not about how much you accumulate, it's how much it pays you. And the whole mutual fund world that financial advisors, remember, they don't make money. They're not paid to make you money. They're paid to sell you a product, which is always based on mutual funds, the stock market. That's all they offer you is Wall Street. You can do better. Going into Main Street investing, things like real estate where there's a real asset backing it up. You could do things like that, making you more money right now. That's why a lot of our clients can make quadruple the income that they were expecting to do in retirement currently versus possibly never. That is the difference. That's the trap everybody falls into. And you can even protect your money better and you can keep growing it year after year. You can compound income, that passive income that you can reinvest year after year to keep compounding your income year after year versus just worrying about compounding interest and hoping you have enough to live on and scrape by on for the rest of your life. So if you want to do like what a lot of our clients do, you want to become work optional where you work because you want to, not because you have to, with enough passive income, go to moneyripples.com/consulting and feel free to book a discovery call just to see what's possible. See if you can actually reach that passive income goal that you have. And maybe, just maybe, hope is sooner than you actually think. Go do that today.